ecosystem restoration. I'm here at Everglades restoration. What happened? South Florida ecosystem. Everglades restoration will have been a small part of South Florida ecosystem. The people are still not at the table. We had the same discussion 10, 12 years ago. The people are not at the table. We need to be at the table, and I will sit down.
I have a question and a follow-up to Thaddeus, because I want to make people aware that we have a unique opportunity to hold public servants responsible to the public that they are paid to serve. And that is, WORDA 2000 requires a 5-year report back to Congress. So the second 5-year report period is coming up in 2010. Consequently, everybody in this arena should recognize that we have a peerless opportunity to drill down to the facts of what we need to have in that report. That is not going to be in there except as a sham because the people are not engaged. And the question that I have for the panel is, you speak of outreach and if they hear about it. And I'm really interested in how are they going to hear about it? What is your marketing and outreach budget? How are people enabled to know and therefore to participate? Because I didn't hear that.
I guess I will try and field your question with regard to outreach. I can't tell you what the district's full budget for outreach is. Within the Broward Service Center, we do note a lot of outreach events on our webpage. We have a portion of the district webpage. One of the organizations that we worked very closely with during the last year is the Water Resources Task Force, which was a working group formed by Broward County, the League of Cities, and the district to address future water supply issues for the Broward County area. We support their meetings and provide all of their information, agendas, etc., on that webpage to try and get that information out there. The biggest Everglades restoration project impacting Broward County is what's known as the Broward County Water Preserve Areas. It's the C9 impoundment, C11 impoundment, and a related seepage area that runs in between. Early in my career in the service center, we were involved in doing basis and design reports and public meetings associated with that. We did advertising in newspapers, sent out flyers, spoke to local governments, tried to encourage them to invite their citizens. We also took a lot of presentations. We did 44 outreach presentations on that particular project to homeowners associations in nearby areas to try and inform the public as best we could what that project entailed and what the time schedule for it would be. In the intervening year and a half, that project has been turned over to the Corps. The Corps is now taking the lead on it. That project is in design, and they're not at a point for public meetings as yet. But it's my understanding that when we get to the point of them coming back for public meetings, that the Service Center will also try and engage the public to talk about those projects. We participate in a lot of public and community outreach efforts. We attend events such as today, and we're all, I think, taking copious notes so that we can take information back to the district. Additionally, we participate in local community events like Water Matters Day. Coconut Creek recently had an Arbor Day celebration, naturescape events at our Broward County schools, events like that. So we try and be out in the community at some of those events. Over the last couple of years, the district has been active in some restoration efforts with regard to the North Fork of the New River, and we worked closely with some of the homeowners groups in that area as well to try and accomplish some of those ends. Again, a myriad of opportunities out there. We're a small staff. We do the best that we can to cover them. But obviously, we're here today. I know that all three of us brought business cards. If we can be of service to you, that's what we do and we want to be.
So I want to get back. I think Broward County there's actually been some interesting outbreaks, but I'm not engaged anymore, and I think many of you are no longer engaged because I always feel it's not meaningful. And I really feel that I'm not waiting for my comments to see in the back of an appendix. I would actually like to see change. And I think often it is because when you ask for any input, it's really too late. The decisions have already been made, we're already so far in the process. So how do we get to meaningful? That I don't just see it in the back of my comments, but actually see it in back in the text and the language and the actions that follow.
I'm not sure I have a response to that. All I can say is that is a process that we work within. And it is the federal process when we're talking about the CERT projects that's defined for us in the framework in which we work in. That is the only mechanism that we have. And it is a long process.
Okay.
I have several questions, so bear with me, please. Going back to what y'all said, is based on your outreach and public input, what is your evaluation for saying that your public discourse has been successful or needs to be modified, and how often is that evaluation done?
I can only address that at the service center level and tell you that we try and engage in as many opportunities as we can. We try to evaluate and attend events that are most widely recognized as community interest that are going to draw a group such as yourself today that are informed and engaged. We're always looking at our activities, always looking to add activities, but honestly, at this point, budgetary constraints are a huge issue for us, so that does play a factor.
Over the period of time, you or anyone has your participation, you say activities, and I don't consider outreach to be an activity. You know, I don't consider outreach to be a presentation or participation necessarily in some cultural event or some cultural activity or some offering that someone else did. For me, that is not outreach. For me, outreach is geared to dialogue, exchange, and providing and receiving information from the impacted community. That's what I consider to be outreach. I don't know about anybody else, but it's really not flyers and distributing information to whomever it is may come by. It's really trying to garner an intentional audience of citizens to let them know and to give them status and offer opportunity for them to engage and become more involved than they may have previously been. Another question is, one of the primary aspects of CERP is ASRs, aqua storage and recovery wells. Regarding this debate that occurred around ASRs, what has been done to answer some of those questions, and has there been any modification in terms of the role ASRs will play in Everglades restoration?
When you say modification, what are you referring to?
Basically, I'm referring to, no, we will not do ASRs.
Yes, to the position.
You know, but I'm just saying, you know, the number of, there were I think 7 scientific questions that needed to be answered, or that were begging for answers from CROGI and other organizations and institutions. One dealt with the transitivity, the ASR wells moving, whether they would retain their bubble shape, how they would interact with the subsurface, whether they would be punctured, whether the microorganisms would die. How have those issues been addressed? And based on what comes in, has there been any modification to ASRs and its roles in Everglades restoration?
I'm not the ASR person, but based on what I know of them and what I have observed, is ASRs do not have the role that they did at the beginning of CERP. There are several ASR projects and studies ongoing because of those questions. But when they were originally put out in the CERP Yellow Book, I believe there were somewhere around 300 of them. It was huge.
And so,
and it's been
May
scaled
I
back.
interject and ask for the purposes of the audience that you explain what ASR is, what the technology is, or can you do that? Would you do that, Cynthia? Say what is proposed for the ASRs.
For us, and then y'all can get, for Belle Lake, Hokie, and South Bay, Lake Okeechobee had been our primary source of drinking water. And even though it is not listed in Word 2000 as a natural resource, they have, water conservation areas and a whole bunch of other things in Word 2000 that have been deemed natural resources, but the 34-mile lake, that's that dark spot in the state of Florida, is not considered a natural resource according to the U.S. Congress and the passage of Word 2000. However, the proposal was to capture water when it rained in excess, like the pier that we've just gone through, to capture that excessive water, treat that water, then pump that water underground into an aquifer. And then when drought comes, like we've just come out of a drought, when drought comes, they would draw that water back up, put that water back into Lake Okeechobee, and then Lake Okeechobee would have the uses that it had before in supplying and making sure that there was water for the South, the region of South Florida Water Management District. Now, y'all, you can add to that, or somebody else may want to offer some other explanation.
No, I mean, you said what? Sorry.
So they were proposing 300 plus wells to go around Lake Okeechobee, principally, Lake Okeechobee, that they would take in and out of the lake, this shallow lake, when they needed it, not to necessarily supply us with water, because the rest of South Florida depends on aquifers, even this came aquifer, the South or the Floridan aquifer for their water source, but to further impact what at that point in time was our water source by drawing water in and out, understanding that the regulations that were to be enforced by the Safe Drinking Water Act or the Clean Water Act had not been enforced historically when it came to Lake Okeechobee by neither DEP, South Florida Water Management District, or EPA. So the concern at that point in time and now is, and I'd like to know what the relocation of those wells is going to be, because I don't just want it to be a bigger well, so we only need 150 because it's twice as large. But the additional concern is that within the Floridan aquifer and in the area of Belgrade, as well as in Miami-Dade County, there is contamination that already exists in those wells. So how, our scientific question was, how do you juggle and juxtapose the current contamination, the injection of fresh water, treated fresh water, into a brine and salty water environment without there being any interaction? And if there is given any interaction, how do you know what the consequences of that interaction are going to be? So if you could tell me at this, where are we at this point in time with ASR wells as it relates to CERP?
I think ASR wells have a long way to go. we don't have that information yet in order to pursue that part of the program.